Hi, my name is Radovan, and I would like to present Espresso Test today. So what are Espresso tests and how they differ from JUnits? So Espresso tests are a bit different from JUnit tests. JUnit tests are naturally a little bit smaller, whereas Espresso tests focus on testing on device. So one comparison between Espresso and JUnits is that they require either an Android emulator running or a real device connected to your computer. They are also a little bit different when it comes to their execution costs and writing costs. They are integrated into the Android ecosystem. That means that you cannot mock as much, but on the other hand, you don't really need to. So in this lesson, what we'll create is an application with a couple of controls, and we will test out the functionality of those controls. So if you want to follow me, let's create a new project without an activity. Let's call this project Espresso Test project. Let's call it something nicer. There we go. And let's call it Espresso. And we can also put it in a temporary folder called Espresso Test. There we go. Minimum SDK can remain 24. It doesn't really matter for us right now. So once we have a project, what we can do is, after it loads, it's going to take just a minute. We're going to create an activity, and we're just going to have that activity display a simple text. So opening the project, I'm going to the application, source, main, Java. What we can do is we create a new Kotlin file. Let's call it start activity. Let's name it start activity, and it extends the activity class. There we go. Let's create a short layout for this activity. And I just noticed I mistyped the name. And let it be a simple layout. It can be a constraint layout. And let's call it start activity layout. Going fast through all of this because we have already done this before. In this particular layout, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a simple text view, which is going to wrap content, the text going to be inside. Let's say that this is going to be hard-coded hello world. And let's say that the top, that since this is a constraint layout, we need constraints. So let's put it somewhere in the middle. So top to top of parent, and let's do the same bottom to bottom of parent, start to start of parents, and the same for the end to end of parent. There we go. Let's close this and let's see how it looks. Okay, so we have the thing there. So inside of our activity, what we can do is we can write an onCreate. Let's override it. And in this onCreate, what we can do is we will just add the set content view to our layout. Let's say that the start activity layout. So let's run this really quickly to verify that it is actually runnable. And while it runs, maybe what we can do is we can start looking at the Espresso test. So how would we normally test that, in fact, the activity is displaying the hello world data? Normally, using a unit test, we would have to mock a lot of things. We would have to mock, let's say, the whole Android framework. It would be really not really nice. And I just noticed I forgot to add it into the manifest. So let me really quickly do that. There we go. Activity, start activity, code. And I will just copy paste the necessary intent filters so that it runs by default. There we go. And we can see it returns a hello world. So what is here to be tested? So what we could do is we could test if it really displays hello world. So what can we do? We can write an Espresso test. So we have one automatically generated by us. But what we would like to focus right now on is really UI testing. So what we can do is we can simply remove this test, and let me a little bit explain the directory layout and everything. So as you might have learned before, the tests, the JUnit tests, are located in the test directory here. However, the Android tests are located here in the Android test directory. So these all tests which are actually here are run with the on-device kind of mentality, which means that instead of using a separate JVM during the testing process, these ones actually need an Android device, which I'm currently running here. So what we can do is, let me just remove the clutter. You can see here that we are running this with the Android JUnit 4 runner, which means that this is basically the test harness, which does all the heavy lifting for the connectivity and the running of the application itself. What is left for me to do in this particular case is really just to write a simple annotation called a rule. And this rule only contains some metadata to which particular activity I would like to test by this test case. So what we want to do is we want to create an activity rule. And this particular rule is going to be the activity scenario rule. And this activity scenario rule is going to be testing the start activity class. So what this means is actually when I run these tests on the virtual device, I will be able to see this particular task or activity. So let me write a simple test, and let's say we write a function is hello world displayed. And to run UI tests, what you have to write are so-called matchers. Matchers basically are this sort of meta language which is able to describe the elements on a UI in a programmatical sense and then run some operations on it. So for example, I'm currently looking for a text called hello world. So what I can do that I will explain to the code that on the view, let me just import it with text, let's say, hello world. Check that the view assertion matches this matcher, view matchers with text hello world. So this is a little bit of a redundant test, but it kind of describes the grammar in a nice way. So if I run this particular test, you will see that the test is being instantiated, the application is launched, and it failed. So what is it complaining about? So it is complaining that no views in the hierarchy are matching text hello world. So I have a bug and I made a mistake somewhere. So let's first fix this. It could be that something is wrong with this particular matcher. Matching based on text is not really exact. So let's go back to the activity layout. And what we can do is we can put an ID here. So let's call this hello world text. Let's instead of doing this, let's find the element by ID, and you can see that it already does not like you are doing it with text. It wants an ID. So let's run this again. And again, it complains. So why is that? So if I check again, oh, I see that I made a typo. So this test actually figured out that I have made a typo. So once this is fixed and I run it again, you can see that actually my typo has been detected. I have fixed it, and now the application is correct as I specified it. So going back to the actual syntax of this Espresso test, so it is quite readable, even if you don't really understand Espresso itself. So what can we do to simplify it is let us just do a very easy import, removing redundant qualifiers. So let's say view assertions and view matchers. Let me do it like this. There we go. We don't need this anymore. So this one actually reads in a very human way. On view with this particular ID, check that the text in this view is hello world. And this can be actually done, or a lot of things can be written here. So for example, let us extend this layout and let's say that we will have an edit text. Again, with wrapping content, let's put this start of parent. Let's put this top to bottom of the hello world text. And let us remove, or let us close this. So looking at the design, I will need to make it a little bit center. Let's make it that it is as wide as the parent. And okay, so now it should look okay. So once I run it again, we will be able to see, for example, the text view, right? So it is here. So I can type inside. So you can also automate this process using Espresso. So for example, let us again add an ID to this particular element. So let's call it edit text 1. And let's type into it something using automation. So let's do test function, write something in edit text. Okay, so let us write this particular test. So what we want to say is that on the view with ID RID edit text, what we want to do is we want to perform an action. So what we can do is we can view the actions. Inside this view actions class. And if we want, we can type text. And what we can type is, let's say, something fun. So let us run this test. And there we go. You can see that it actually performs the writing. So you can see that actually this sort of automation is quite simple, quite straightforward. You can write a lot of actions. You can simulate a lot of actions coming from actual users. The benefit of these tests is that it really runs on the device. Everything is integrated, so it is no longer a unit test. In fact, it is the whole ecosystem of your application is running inside of there. So it is more of an integration layer test. And yeah, effectively, there are some patterns which are good to follow. For example, the page object pattern, which kind of defines the UIs which you create with simple classes. So you no longer have to do on views with IDs, etc. You encapsulate this in your own specific domain language. So let's say you create your own UI controller for your particular class. And then the functions of these controller would be click on like button, and the logic inside would be hidden, so that when you write your test, you don't have to copy paste a lot of your views or view IDs and assertions. And I think that that is effectively all I wanted to show you today. Maybe one last tip. These view actions and view assertions, there are a good source of documentation. So if you want to understand what kind of actions you can perform, the easiest way how to do it is actually just to type view actions dot, and Android Studio is going to intelligently suggest what you can actually do with the item. Same goes with locating particular elements. You don't have to use IDs. For example, you can use any other identifiers, as you saw, text, some DIDs, some labels for accessibility. So if I look for view matchers and I do dot, you can see there are some assertions and things around it. And I think that is it from my side. Thank you for attending. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask them.